Hey everybody, let's go ahead and make a metal double quillion guard. It's going to have a slot in the middle, and it's going to slip over the tip of the knife, past the ricasso, and then rest on those little shoulders there. All right, let's go. Gonna make sure to stay on that side of the line. That way I don't shorten my guard by cutting too much off. All right, got it cut to length. Now we'll just move to the next step. All right, now that we've got the guard cut to length, we're gonna go ahead and mill it to the final dimensions. I'll measure where it is currently, then figure out what I want it to be, subtract those two numbers from each other, divide it in half, and take that number off of each side. So if it's at 100 and you want it to be 50, you're gonna subtract 50 from it and then divide it by 2, getting 25, and then you take 25 off of each side to get to your final dimensions. Okay, so we have this chunk of 4/16 steel. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide, well, tall right now. And we're going to have to take off about 100 thousandths from each side to get to where I'm gonna want it. And then we'll flip it the other way and mill just the top and the bottom and clean them up. Shouldn't really be taking too much off of there. All right, so I'm using a 1/2 inch milling cutter. I will be taking off 25 thousandths per pass, and then at the end I will, mic it and just make sure that it's at the correct place. If it's not, I'll go back and take a little bit more off. I've been told that some people take around 50 thousandths off per pass. Personally, I don't think it takes that much more time, just to do a couple more passes, and I feel that it will extend the life of my tool. So that's what I like to do. All right, let's throw this into warp drive. All right, so we got the last pass. Let's just go ahead and clean this up and flip it over and start in on the other side and take off the next 100 thousandths. Just in case you're wondering, this is at 5 times speed. All right, now that that side's done, we'll clean it up again, flip it onto its side. This is the actual top and bottom. Oh, here we got a little reference so you can see. Now we're going to take about 10 to 12 thousandths off the top and the bottom. Since I'm not really making this fit into a slot, it doesn't really matter. You can, we technically could keep it at the same thickness that it is now, but it would have that ugly, mill surface on it, and we're just gonna take that off, clean it up, and then when we take it to the surface grinder, it's going to be a lot cleaner. So I realized that I just said surface grinder there, but actually what I meant is disc grinder. I will clean these guards up on my disc grinder, not the surface grinder. I will also go ahead and do kind of a zero pass on this, just to make sure that I've got it at the cut that I actually want and that the surface is nice and smooth. All right, so the width on this is considerably different, but the height is about the same. All right, Dicom tutorial. You take the blue stuff and you rub it on the top until it is blue, and then you are done once you let it dry. Boom, tutorial done. All right, so here we have blade width, blade thickness, guard width, guard length, center, length of cut, widen each side, and the quillions. We'll go into this just a little bit later. I just wanted to explain what these little abbreviations meant. Very similar to the guard that we did on the McGavin knife earlier. All right, so I'm basically just gonna take measurements and then write down the measurements as I go. We are getting the knife, or the blade width right now. That is the width of the ricasso, or the widest point of your blade that the guard will have to slip over. Now we're doing blade thickness. This is the full thickness of the ricasso. If you're going to clean up the ricasso, do it beforehand. I'm doing a user grade finish on this knife, so the sides will just stay how they are. Now moving over to the guard, we'll do the width of the guard width. And we'll do guard length. And that should be all of the measurements I need. The rest will just be math. Okay, so now that I have my measurements, I have to do a little bit of math to figure out what I'm actually going to do to this piece of metal to turn it into an actual guard. So first step is figuring out what the center of this piece of steel will be, and that's only on the width. We're not going to worry about the length. So the center is going to be the guard width plus your cutter, the diameter of your cutter, divided by 2. So we'll take guard width, 542. Excuse me while I break this out. Oh, sorry about that. So we said 542 minus the cutter, which is 1/4 inch, and then equals, and then we'll divide it by 2. So that is not correct. We minused the cutter. Why did we minus the cutter? Okay, so we're starting over again. Break out our little thing here. We got center is guard width plus cutter divided by 2. So we're gonna try this one more time. 542 plus the cutter of 250 equals divided by 2. There's our center. 396. I'll go ahead and write that down. All right, clear. We'll go on to the length of cut. Whoops. So we got blade width minus the cutter. So our blade width is 1.162. So I'll just type that in, 1.162. Then we said minus the cutter, minus, oh, actually, we'll have to start that over. Since this is over 1, we will have to do decimals. Okay, 0.16262. Oh my gosh, I don't even have you guys looking at what I'm doing. All right, 1.162 minus the cutter of 0.250 equals our length of cut, 912. 912 thousandths. Okay, then widening each side, the blade thickness minus the cutter divided by 2. So blade thickness is 286 minus the cutter minus 250 equals divided by 2 equals 18 thousandths off of each side. All right, then for our quillions, this is only important for actually marking out. These are the only 2 marks that we'll actually put on the guard. Everything else will be done on the mill. So our quillion is equal to the guard length, 2.329, 2.239 minus the blade width, going up, blade width 1.162 minus 1.162 equals, divided by 2, 538 thousandths. We're not going to count the half a thousandth. All right, so 538. Okay, so I will go ahead and mark that out onto the guard, and I will show you what I'm talking about. All right, I have you flipped around to face me, so all of this is probably backwards, but I've got it set to the 538 thousandths that is equivalent to our quillions. So I'm going to come in here, lay that side against here, and just pull it across and make a line. I'll flip it over, do the exact same thing. Boop. There you go. Those are our stop and start marks when we're going to be milling. And they're really just guidelines. It won't be super specific. It will be more about what we have written down on the list here than what these marks actually are. This is just, like I said, a guideline. All right, so first things first, we're gonna go ahead and center the cutter on our guard material. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this down just a little bit. I'm gonna take it out to the very edge, turn it on, and then we're gonna move it in until it just barely kisses and it flicks off a couple of flakes. Then we'll back it back up, and then we'll move in our like 390 some thousandths. I'll go check it out and make sure that I'm going the correct depth in to make sure that we are centered. All right, here we go. All right, so now that I have it centered, I'm going to go ahead and move the cutter over until the edge is at this mark that we have. Probably somewhere around there. We're going to come back and fine tune it so we don't have to go exactly to the mark. We're just going to get close. All right, here we go. Now we're going to do some plunge milling. I'll stop it again and show you what it looks like before I go too far. So I know on my machine that about 7 turns on this little wheel is not going to go through, but it's going to hog out most of the material on this guard. So I'll turn it about 7 turns, bring it back out, I'll move it down a little bit and do another little hole pocket right next to it. And then I will repeat this process all the way down where that slot will be in between my start and stop marks that I put in for my Quillion. So we have plunge milled a bunch of holes, technically pockets. I haven't gone through the bottom yet because I want to try to keep the top side of the guard as clean as possible. This blue side is actually the bottom side. So right now I'm going to go ahead and just pull the cutter back through at this depth down to this line right here, and I'll clean up all these little teeth along the edges. So now that we are milling off these little teeth, the little chips that it's going to be spitting out, that the milling cutter will be spitting out, are going to be like little tiny metal slivers. So you're going to be wanting to be careful, and you know, some of you might want to use a vacuum to vacuum up this stuff. I kind of just blow it around my shop, but every once in a while I do get little metal slivers in my fingers. So in reality, it'd probably be best to vacuum all this stuff up. Okay, so we have brought the cutter all the way back and taken off some of those teeth, and we've brought it all the way to the line now. Now I'll go ahead and I'll punch through the bottom, and I will do my length of cut measurement and basically just take it out to here, and then we can do the widened sides. Right now I'm just counting the rotations. Every time I pass 0, it's going to be 100 thousandths. So I count up to 9, and then I'll do the last 12, and then we get a nice surprise. Alright, so it looks like I measured something wrong. So I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to crunch some measurements and numbers and see where I went wrong. I'm going to go ahead and finish out the guard, see what it looks like on the knife, and if it's just too big of a gap, I'll start over and do a new one. But if not, it's just a good lesson on, measure twice, cut once, I guess. Alright. Here we go. Starting back up, we're going to finish it out, and then we're going to widen the sides. Okay, so I'm going to turn the machine back on. I'm going to move the table in 18 thousandths, then I'll do my cut, and then I'll pull it back 18 times 2, so 36 thousandths, and then I'll clean up the other side. All right, so we'll go see how this fits. All right, so as you can see, that's pretty terrible. I'm gonna go ahead and just make another guard because that is not gonna work. Okay, here's the new guard. There's the old guard. Much nicer. A little bit of gap there, but that won't be a problem at all because I'm gonna solder it up. Okay, now that we've got that guard fiasco figured out, I'm just gonna go ahead and drip a tiny drip of this thin super glue here and let it soak in, and then it's gonna dry and it's just gonna tack hold this guard in place while I drill it. Okay, so I went ahead and I laid some blue dye down here on the side of the guard. I'm gonna go ahead and put my little gauge here at around 150 thousandths. That's where I like it to be. You can put it wherever you want. I'll just go ahead and scribe a little line across here. See it there? Right there. Okay, and then I'm just gonna come across with my scribe and I'll do another line about 2/3 of the way up the knife. And that's where I will drill to put my pinhole at. You can literally put it anywhere in here. It doesn't really matter. I know a lot of people like to put it dead center. I like to put it off to the side so that I know the guard's orientation. All right, so since I milled these sides parallel earlier, I can just go ahead and put the knife in here like so, hold it, and the hole will go straight through because the sides are all parallel. Ooh. All right, there we go, pinhole. Now I'll just take one of these little temporary brass pins, same diameter, and I'll just slip it right in. Tap it, tap it, tap it. Go ahead and set it in with a little center punch here. You got it in there. I'll just be able to pop that out later on. For right now, I'm gonna go ahead and draw in the marks for my quillions. I just freehand those in. If you guys wanna come up with your own stencil or something, feel free to do that. I've just never felt it necessary. I was told by Dietmar Kressler that you want the quillion to be about the same radius as your pinky. So I don't know if you can see that there very well, but that is what we're going for. All right, so that's what I've drawn in. Let's see how close it is to the radius of my pinky. That's pretty close. I got it a little flatter on the top, but pretty darn close. I used to go in and chop these on the bandsaw and just get the big chunks out and then take it to the grinder. You can just grind all this away if you want. I've done that a couple of times. It doesn't really matter too much. It's just gonna save you a little time if you go to the bandsaw. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and go in and cut these little chunks off. I'll try to keep it pretty square. I'm not going to try to get that radius in there with the bandsaw. So my hand was in the way during a major portion of that shot, so I decided to just cut that whole part out because you couldn't see anything anyways, and then just show you this side of the Quillion and how I'm cutting those out. I'm basically just doing one straight line, long ways on the Quillion, and then I come back and I cut that little chunk out. It's just going to be a square. It's not going to be radius at all. All right, there we go. All right, so now we are going to clean up the radiuses on this little 1/2-inch wheel here. I have a 50 grit belt. I usually like to brace my hand by putting my finger right there, but I'm realizing that's in the way of the camera. So I'm going to just freehand it without the brace. I like to do one side first along the line that I scribed in, and then I will clean up the other side. So here you can see it's at well, I've cleaned it up to the scribe line there. It's about the radius of the pinky. This side is still a square because I haven't touched that side yet. You can see that this line right here is crooked. It's lower on the left side. We want to straighten that out and make it parallel to the tang of the knife. That's going to help us keep the radius parallel the whole way through. You can also tell that this is higher on one side, lower on the other side. This is how we will make sure that this is all straight too. So we got a couple of reference points there, and we'll just grind and grind until we feel that those are getting to be about even, and then I'll check it and make sure and see what it looks like. All right, so that part seems to be pretty well parallel. There's still that little chunk that's been taken out. We can see the bandsaw marks there. So we'll just keep pushing kind of down and in to try to push that wheel up into the corner of that little Quillion radius. So that bandsaw mark is practically gone. Got this bump here. We're gonna get rid of that bump that's on the tang by sliding it in gently and then just raising it very slowly to make the tang and that guard flush, and also make sure that the radius carries from the guard into the handle. We don't want a lump there. Very easy to get a lump there. Now I'll go ahead and do the same steps on the other side. So starting just on, I'm just doing this side. I'm not worried about the back side, and I'm just grinding down to my scribed line. So like I said before, this is like the check grind. Once I get it to the point where I want it, then I can focus on this back side and bring those two grinds together. It's lopsided, you can tell. That's because I'm focusing just on the one side, not both sides. This top part seems to be fairly parallel though, but we'll just keep that how it is. So gently resting that Quillion on top of the belt, I'm going to mostly just be pushing in to try to shape that radius in on the other side on the back side of the guard, the side that's facing me. So it's very important to try to keep everything parallel and symmetrical while you're doing this. If you notice that something is looking a little funky, then try to fix it as soon as you can. So we've got the radius done in there, and now we're going to get rid of that little lump that ends up forming right where that guard meets that shoulder on the tang. It doesn't take much, but it helps to make it flow better. All right, so I want to take a second to talk about this. So we've got the Quillions shaped, but this edge is still extremely square. So to help with the handle contouring in the future, I'm going to go ahead and slide this in like this, just how we have it, just how we have that radius in there. And then I'm going to twist it, and I'm going to knock these corners off. This right here, where are we at? Right here, I'm going to have these corners knocked off and rounded out. I'll show you in just a second what that's going to look like. And that's going to help us, once we put the handle material on and we're shaping all the handle material, to not have to work through this hard edge of steel right next to our soft handle material. We're going to be able to contour this very easily and keep this flush with the guard. The handle material will be flush with the guard rather than the guard coming down and there being like a dip in your handle material. I'm sure you've experienced that before if you've done it like this. All right, let's get to work. All right, so I'm just coming in flat and straight, and then I'm gonna twist it, not quite to a 45. I'm not sure what the angle degree would be on that, maybe 30 degrees or something. I honestly, I'm not sure what to tell you on that. Just round it and make sure that you don't have nice square corners. Like you got rounded corners like this, not square. And I'll show you again, just sliding right in, and then we're gonna twist it a little bit and twist it the other way. Look at it, make sure it looks pretty good. Didn't look good, so I'm gonna take a little bit more off. All right, there you go. Now that'll just roll right over. All right, so as you can see, that did not take very long at all. I hit all four corners and they're all nice and rounded off now. It'll help to keep my hand material flush when I go in to shape it. All right, now I'll come back and I'll make this oval. I like to rough shape my guards before heat treat. That's just me personally. I've done it after heat treat also. There's not really any difference. You can do it either way. All right, so we got the 10-inch wheel here, 50 grit belt. I'm just gonna come in and remove some of that corner and roll it, pulling it up and kind of rolling it slightly, rolling the quillion back towards me as I get towards the top. And this is going to help to make this squared rectangle guard into a elongated oval. All right, so we've got one side, got the other side. Those are both on the same side of the wheel so that I have a similar hand motion. I'll come over to this other side and try to make it parallel. I like to use my left hand first because it's not my dominant hand, and then I'll use my dominant hand to try to match my non-dominant hand. All right, so we have it roughly symmetrical in shape at least. Now from the side you can see that it hasn't gone down to the bottom of the guard. We need to make sure that all of that blue disappears. So holding the knife at an angle, this is not flat against the guard isn't flat against the wheel. I am favoring the top of the guard, the portion closest to the blade, and I'm giving the guard a slight taper. All right, looking pretty symmetrical. Go ahead and work this other side and get I want grinder marks along the entire face of the side of the guard. There shouldn't be any flat parts from where I milled it. You want to use nice, long, even strokes and flipping that guard over to try to help keep it symmetrical. All right, so we got that Quillion line straight. Same as that one, about the same size. Have the that corners knocked off and rounded. We've got this guard looking fairly ovaled. I'll go ahead and knock those corners off with the slack belt after heat treat, but that is roughed out. All right, so just to go over the motions a little bit of what I was doing, I am not holding the knife flat. I am holding the knife at an angle, like up against the wheel, to give it kind of a taper here, so that when the palm swell comes in, it'll be at about that angle. I'm bringing it up into the wheel and with a lot of pressure, and then decreasing pressure and kind of pulling that top quillion back towards myself to try to round this. This shouldn't be flat here. This should be rounded. It'll help a lot when we go to clean up the handle if this is rounded and not flat. We also want to make sure that we've taken this taper from the center all the way down to the bottom of the center bottom, from center top to center bottom in a taper, so that we're not having to work these two corners to get this side down once we have the handle material on. We just already have it where it needs to be. I've taken time to try to balance the quillions and make sure that they're symmetrical. I don't know if you can see that very well on here, but they are fairly close to symmetrical. To do that, I like to work one side, flip it over, work the same side, and then do the same. I'm going to work one side, flip it over, work the other side, and then I'm going to work them all together in one motion, one rounded movement. And then I'll flip it over, do the other side, and then I'll do both sides on each side to make sure that they're as symmetrical as I can get them. I figure this motion is not going to be the same as this motion no matter how hard I try. So if I keep flipping it and flipping it, eventually they'll balance all out. It seems to work fairly well. So that's why you'll see me flipping it around in my hand quite a bit. All right, so we started with a raw chunk of 4/16. We cut it on the bandsaw to length. We milled it to the dimensions that we needed. We put this slot in for it to slip over the blade of the guard. We drilled a hole for the pinhole, then secured it with a temporary pin. We drew on where we wanted our quillions, what they wanted to look like. We bandsawed the most of it out and then cleaned it up on the grinder. Then we went ahead and did the radius on the sides of the guard. And now it is finished. I'll clean up the face of this later after heat treat. This is going to be a user grade knife, so it's not going to get polished very much. It's just going to maybe 120 to, 400. It'll be plenty clean. All right, so just to keep things simple, I went ahead and milled this notch for the guard in at the same dimensions that my micarta actually already was. So I can just cut it to size, mill the slot, and slip it in. Should be pretty easy. All right, so I've cut out my little piece of micarta here that I'm going to use as a guard, and I've milled the sides of it flat just for my convenience. We're going to have to figure out the thickness of the knife and the depth of the slot that we will need to cut into this piece of micarta. So we'll need to know how wide each side is going to be, the width of the slot, and the length of the slot. So we'll go ahead and figure that out now. All right, so I have a little chart made up here. I have BW for blade width. That's gonna be basically, where are we at? From this point here, right there, to this point up here. We're gonna take the longest route because that's the depth that we're gonna have to cut in order for the guard to slip over and cover the entire knife. All right, then over here we have BT, which obviously is going to be the blade thickness. I need to know how thick the blade is in order to make the slot wide enough for it to slip over the side of the knife. Then we have GW, which is going to be the width of the guard, because we're going to need to know, how much is left over to put this slot in the center. We got to figure out how to center the slot. So to find, and then we have ES, which is, for in my brain, each side that we're going to have, like this, if I can actually mark on this. Whoop, whoop. We're gonna have kind of a box cut out in there. And you can't even see that. There it is. That's terrible, but there you go. It's gonna look much better than that. All right, so each side, we're going to need to know how wide this side is and this side is. There's two sides each side. Then we have the depth of the cut. So from here to here, we need to know how long we're going to cut this on the milling machine to make sure that it has enough space, like I said, to slip over this part and still come out on this other side and have a little chunk off that we can grind down to where we want it. All right, so first step to find each side, we're gonna take the guard width, and then we're going to subtract the blade thickness. So 0.574, or you can just do 574 since these are both 3 digits, it's not gonna be a problem. So on 574 minus 225 equals, and then we'll divide it by 2 because there's 2 sides. That number will be 1745. I will probably just do 174. Keep it easy. All right. Then the depth of the cut is just going to be the blade width, this number. But then I like to add 50 thousandths so that it sticks out over the side. I know that I'm gonna have a little bit sticking out of the side. Also, when I cut this with the milling cutter, this won't be square, this will actually be rounded. Oh man. Yeah, that's round. So that'll be rounded, so the corners are gonna hit sooner here on this square. It's not gonna have complete clearance for this to sit in flush. You can file that out if you want. I just find it easier to make this part longer and let that just be there. All right, so we'll have the depth of the cut at, let's see, man, I better just do this on the calculator. All right, 1.930 plus 50 thousandths. What am I at? Plus 0.05. There's where I was making a mistake. Okay, so it's going to be 1.98. 1.98, and there would be a 0 there, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now we can go ahead and transfer these two numbers. Oh my gosh, these two numbers, the depth of cut and each side, onto this piece right here, and then it'll be ready to mill. Okay, so before I head to the bandsaw, I just wanted to show you what I have here. I'm going to go ahead and head to the bandsaw and cut out the majority of this middle section, and then I'll head to the mill and clean up all the sides and make it all nice and smooth to slip over the knife. Please be very, very careful if you're doing this. Your fingers will get very close to the bandsaw, and I'd hate for anything to happen to you guys that was causing a serious injury. So please be very, very careful. Go slow. Don't push it. If you feel like it's not going right, then, you know, just figure something else out. And honestly, this probably isn't even necessary with the micarta. It is pretty necessary with a guard. You can, with a metal guard, you can drill out all of this section first, I've seen people do, which might be better. There's a bunch of different ways to do the same thing. So just do what feels best to you. This is what we end up with. There you go. So I just realized we'll also need to know how much to move our cutter over during milling, and that's going to be the diameter of our cutter minus the blade thickness. That's going to leave us what's left over and what we need to make up for with the cutter. I'm going to be using a 3/16 cutter, and my blade thickness is 0.225. So I will go over here and I'll go 0.1875 for a 3/16 cutter minus, well, I should have done this. I'm doing this backwards, but that's fine. 225 is going to give me a negative number, but I'll just remove the negative, and that's what's going to give me, I got to move it over 37 thousandths, 37.5 thousandths, or 38 thousandths. We'll just do the 38 thousandths to give us a little extra clearance on the sides. All right, so that's what we'll do. So here we have cutter sticking out the bottom and the top, so I know that I'm going to be getting a full cut. I've already gone ahead and lined this up roughly with the mill, and then I will come in and I will cut this first line, whoop, right here, all the way down until the cutter reaches the end mark here. And then I'll move it over, I think it was the 37 thousandths. I'll check and make sure that I'm still remembering that right. Wait, it was 38 thousandths, I believe. And then I'll make that cut, move it over, do the other cut, and then make sure that it fits onto the knife. All right, here we go. All right, so once this kicks in, I realized that my camera, my camera sitting on must have been touching the milling machine in some way, so it's giving some vibrations, and it's kind of hard to see what's going on here. But basically right now I am just milling in along that first line until I get to my stopping point. And then I am going to do basically like another cleanup cut, like a zero cut, because that those little tabs that stick out past the vise, they kind of flex because the micarta is so flexible. It's bendy. I mean, it's not super bendy, but it's much more bendy than like a piece of steel. So I will take this initial cut, I'll back it out, and then take another additional cut just to make sure that what I'm cutting is actually closer to what I am wanting. I just want to make sure that I'm getting a full cut. All right, so we're back in the cutter out now. You can see that we've gotten past it, and I'm coming back in just to make sure that everything is clean and as precise as I can get it. All right, now that I've reached the end, I am going to move it over the 38 thousandths that we discussed, and then I will do the same exact thing. I'm gonna take a nice slow cut across to make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure on it, but then I'm going to come back in and then do another zero pass just to make sure that it's as close to the final dimensions as I can get it. All right, so I finished that initial cut. I'm just gonna go back down to where we started, and then I will come back out and do my zero cut. All right, we got the slot milled. Now it's time to see if it fits on the knife. All right, I'm not gonna lie, that came out really close. But once I clean that this backside up on the slack belt, there will be plenty of space. But the fit up is good. Seems to be fairly parallel with the holes that I drilled there, lashing holes. Looking pretty good. We will move on now. All right, so I went ahead and with Sharpie, I did this line, which is, about where this is going to be cut off at, as well as on this side where it's going to be cut off at. Then I scribed, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little line right here, scribed. This is about the center of the guard. Then I went in about 400 thousandths from either end of the guard, and I will put 2 pins right here. That's just specifically how I'm doing it on this knife. You don't need to do that on all your knives. That's just, like I said, aesthetically, I think that looks good on this knife. And we're drilling holes, 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 drilling holes. So the most critical part of this stage is just making sure that you're drilling your holes, straight, and they don't come out, one higher on the back side and the other one is lower on the front side. You want them to both be about center. That's pretty much the only important part. So if you listen closely, you can tell the difference between drilling the micarta and drilling the steel and then drilling into the micarta again. The same is true for the 416 versus your blade steel. If you're paying close enough attention by ear, you can hear it drilling the 416 and then switching over to your blade steel and then switching back over to the 416. We've got a couple holes, couple holes, couple holes, couple holes. All right, so since this is micarta, I'm just gonna skip the bandsaw step. I probably might even skip the bandsaw step if this was metal. So I'm just gonna come in here, 1/2-inch wheel, 50 grit belt, and I'm just going to grind it away until I reach my line, and then I will stop. I got my finger in the way there, but, oh, there we go. Get my head out of the way. And we're just fine tuning that. Honestly, that's not that important to get it that close, but there you go. Oh, and now I'm rounding those edges just like we did with the metal one. That's going to help get that contour in. Granted, this is micarta, so it's not as necessary. But nice and flush, and it's also rounded. Getting ready to put on handles. All right, now we'll do the back side. Take those 2 little chunks off. Same movement, same idea. Just go and push in until I reach that line, and then I'll come through and clean everything up. There we go. Looking good. Okay, looks like we're gonna go ahead and do a little radius on this side as well. That's nice. All right. The guard is nice and smooth and rounded on top and on bottom, and it won't poke our fingers. All right, that guard is finished. I've never canted a guard at this drastic of an angle, but I like the way it looks. It's pretty good. All right, here we go. We put the slot in, drilled it, cut the edges off and rounded them, and now we have a guard. Hey everybody. I just wanted to thank you for watching my videos. We made a couple of guards today, made a metal one and a micarta one, double quillion, single quillion. One slips over the top of the blade, one slips over the side of the knife. I hope that you enjoyed the video, maybe learned something, and we'll see you next time. Bye!